Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the channel. I saw an early screening of Ryan Coogler's newest film, Sinners, the other day, and I want to talk about it. I thought it was so well done. I gave it a little bit of time because I wanted to just like take it all in because I'm such a big fan of his work. But also, I wanted to see how everything was going to go at the box office. I did anticipate that it was going to do pretty well, but I think it kind of surprised people. So it has earned $63 million worldwide so far. It got a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. It knocked a Minecraft movie out of the top spot at the box office. It earned an A on Cinema Score. Over on Letterboxd, it earned 4.3 out of 5 stars. And this movie is the best reviewed film of the decade. So I had to kind of look into this one a little bit because I guess I just hadn't thought about it. But so far, Sinners has received a 96% scoring from film critics and a 98% score overall from general audiences, which I I knew Ryan Coogler was going to knock it out of the park. I did not realize he was going to be breaking records, though. Now, we may get into a few spoilers there, so I do kind of want to give you a heads up if you have not had the opportunity to see the film yet. Possible spoilers ahead. I'll do the best that I can, though. But yeah, just kind of pay attention to that just in case. So, Michael B. Jordan is starring as twins Smoke and Stack. I believe this is the sixth film that Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan have done together. They obviously did Black Panther, they did Wakanda Forever, they did Creed 1, 2, and 3. And in case you haven't seen it, Ryan Coogler rose to fame from his work on Fruitvale Station, which was in 2015, I believe, 2013, 2015. And this was the first time that we saw Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan working together. So they have a lot of just natural chemistry. They play off of each other really well. So going into the film, I did kind of have high expectations because of how well he's been received so far in Hollywood. But just, dude, the two of them together was just something like so wonderful. The film also stars Wumi Masaku as Annie, who plays the love interest to Smoke, Haley Stanfield as Mary, who plays the love interest to Stack, Delroy Lindo as Delta Slim, Jack O'Connell as the outlier Remick, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and Miles Caton, who is this is actually his acting debut. Miles Caton is a very talented musician and R&B singer, and I think that he did a really wonderful job as Sammy Preacher Boy Moore. So we'll talk a little bit about him as well. The film takes place in 1930s Mississippi, and at that time in our country, we were dealing with the Great Depression. Now, even more unfortunately for southern states, it was even tougher. The economy was already bad enough for the general population of Americans, but in the South, it was even harder, especially for African Americans. And so, the most interesting thing about the place in which the film is set is that it's set in Mississippi intentionally. So I did a little bit of digging, and Ryan Coogler's paternal grandfather and his uncle are from Mississippi, so he has roots there. And I found that to be such an important point because one, if you might kind of see it and just you might otherwise think that Mississippi is just a random place where he decided to start filming, but not only does he have roots there, as Black people, we have roots there as well. We have roots throughout the entire South, throughout America, really, but in particular in Mississippi as sharecroppers. And that was a really significant part of this film, too, because we're talking Jim Crow era Mississippi. We're talking mass segregation. And unfortunately, we know that Blacks weren't allowed to really have anything. We weren't allowed to own property. And this was such an important part of the film. Again, it's not just like a random place that was picked. We have roots there. And one of the recurring themes in this film is ancestry, ancestral soil. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. We start the film with Sammy Preacher Boy driving to his father's church. Gets out of the car, frantic panic with his banjo broken and the huge scratch marks all over his face. Just so afraid, so scared of what we later found out happened the prior night. Sammy is comforted by his preacher father, played by singer, songwriter, and actor Saul Williams. Um, his dad has no idea what has gone on, but he can kind of sense that Sammy is way more uneasy than he's ever seen him. And for some reason, the gash on his face is just something that kind of leaves him in a state of horror. We flash back to the previous day where we see Smoke and Stack, played by Michael B. Jordan, whose actual names are Elias and Elijah, coming back to their hometown from finding success in Chicago. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but in the South, and especially in the 1930s during the Great Depression, it was already hard enough for people to make ends meet. And for these two, it's just nice to come back home. Back in their younger days, the twins kind of made a name for themselves in various ways. And so the overall community is happy to see them back. But they each run into their respective ex-lovers. The twins decided they want to take all of the money that they've made, all of the connections that they've made, and come back to buy a juke joint. Not only will they get to expand their business, but they'll have something in the community that every Black person can enjoy, can partake in. And more than anything, they also get to own the land that the building is on. Now, with this being the segregated South at the time, the business owner was white. We later find out that he does have connections to the KKK, but money is green, and that's a color that everybody loves. Now, the twins may be rowdy and rambunctious, but they are also super charismatic and business-minded. Most of the community knows them from their younger days, and it kind of only makes sense to employ their mild-mannered, super sweet and innocent cousin, Sammy. With Sammy not only growing up in the church his whole life, but also having a preacher for a father, he's always grown up with the concept of saints and sinners. And so one of the genius things I thought about titling the film Sinners is that Sammy, pretty much from the moment that we learn that his father is a preacher, as the viewer, you're kind of sat with what that even means, the decisions that you have to make throughout your life. And so Sammy is just excited to see his cousins. And we learn that Sammy wants to sing. I mean, he's grown up in choir his whole life. He's a beautiful musician as well. He plays the banjo, plays a hell of a banjo, actually. Once Smoke and Stack hear him sing and play his banjo, they decide what better way to keep him in the family than to have Sammy become the musical act at their juke joint. Once the twins make their way back to the town square, word gets around that Smoke and Stack are both back. Hoodoo is a traditional African American spiritual practice that combines elements of African spiritualism and American botanical use. And this is really, really important because, as I mentioned earlier, when we're talking about our ancestors and when we're talking about roots, Annie, as a root worker, does these practices not only to keep the traditions of her ancestors alive, but she does it to yield protection for all of her loved ones. We later find out that she made a satchel for Smoke before he left to go to Chicago with his twin brother Stack. And that's going to be a really, really important part of this because in Christianity, it is believed that hoodoo is just a demonic practice, and quite frankly, if anything, it will tie us more to African culture, which is another theme throughout this film. While Smoke and Annie are sowing seeds and reliving a little bit of the past, Stack is trying to actively avoid Mary, played by Haley Steinfeld. Now, the two of them were in a little tryst. Stack told her that, he ran out to go and get cigarettes and essentially never came back. What that means for Mary is that she's 1/8 African American or African, but she presents mostly white, typically. And in the segregated South, this is pretty scary, actually, for her to be seen in a predominantly Black space convening with African Americans at that time, because we are still in the segregated South of Mississippi. So Stack is really trying to get as far away from her as he can, keep the conversation pretty light. Now, within their conversation, we find out that unfortunately, Mary's mother passed. And she's kind of wondering why Stack wasn't around. Now, from what I could tell, Mary was about to get on a train, I think to go back to, I guess, wherever her new home was. But her ties to her ancestors kind of brought her back there. So, again, the connection of your ancestry and the roots from which you were grown keep coming up. So I just thought that that was like a little interesting thing I thought about as I was watching Stack and Mary have their little conversation. Now, while they're having their conversation, they run into their old buddy Delta Slim, played by the incomparable Delroy Lindo. I should not have to tell you who that man is. You should know. Okay? I want to put that out there. Because Smoke and Stack are planning on opening up a juke joint, obviously there are going to be some libations, so they were able to bring a sample of some Irish beer with them. Delta Slim has a taste. He's on board with whatever the twins got cooking up, right? So Delta Slim's on board for everything. Stack proclaims to the crowd that they are going to be opening up a juke joint. And Sammy, who tagged along with him, decides to start playing. You know, he's got his banjo with him and everything, and Delta Slim's cracking a few jokes. And then Sammy starts to sing. And everything changes. The whole mood changes. The crowd is just so enthralled. They're engaged. They're excited to see this just, little skinny, nearly adult boy playing the hell out of this banjo and just singing with the most beautiful voice. While all this is happening, across town, Smoke is visiting an old pal, Bo Chow. So, Bo has a little general store. So not only is Smoke going to spread the word, he's going to ask for a quick little favor. In addition to just kind of catching up with an old friend. Bo is being played by actor and producer Yao. Bo goes to spread the word over to his wife, Grace Chow, played by actress Lee Jun Lee. This might just seem like a fly-by-night type of detail, but it is very intentional that we are talking about a Chinese-American family. They are going to be facing some of the same struggles that African Americans are facing at this time. But even on a deeper level, historically, at that time, there was so much economic cooperation, so much looking out for one another within both communities. So it's not like a random sort of thing that this Chinese family is just so happy to see Smoke again back in town and to kind of help him start up his juke joint and offer supplies and that kind of thing. In addition to helping the twins with their brand new business venture, you can kind of get the feeling that it's so much more than the Chows just helping them out from a financial standpoint or offering assistance in that way. They're just genuinely happy to see their old friends back. They're happy to kind of see members of their community that they know in a different light. After all, at the core of it, that's really what the twins are trying to do. Obviously make a little bit of money, but also building community. Another piece of history that Ryan Coogler has woven into the story is that of the Choctaw tribe. The Choctaw were one of many indigenous tribes that the American government tried to relocate. And they existed prominently in what we consider the Deep South. Now, the Deep South is considered Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. So, at that time, we see members of the Choctaw tribe chasing somebody. Members of the Choctaw are chasing somebody, but not just anybody. They're chasing Remick, played by Jack O'Connell. And Remick is an Irish settler who seemingly is just looking for safety. We soon find out that Remick has a dark secret. Unbeknownst to Joan, played by Lola Kirk, and her husband Bert, played by Peter Germanis, Remick is a vampire. Before Joan and Bert realize this, they let him into their home because they find out that he's running away from the indigenous people. Unfortunately for Joan and Bert, they don't realize that the Choctaw are sending a warning. They have found this man to be a dark sort of mystic. They go, they knock on the door, and they try to warn Joan and Bert, to no avail. And then they say a native prayer over them in the hopes that maybe the gods will keep them safe. In almost no time at all, Joan creeps around the corner into the room to see Remick sitting, eyes glowing red, blood all over his mouth and fangs exposed, and her husband Bert lying in a pool of his own blood on the floor. The person that they thought was just looking for safety was about to turn everything upside down. Tonight's the night. The Twins Juke Joint officially opens. Everybody in the town is there. In attendance is Perline, played by Jamie Lawson, who we see earlier actually is a married woman who has a little bit of a tryst with young Sammy in the film. And then at the door, Cornbread, an old friend of Smoke and Sam. Everybody's there, drinking, dancing, singing, having a good time. Delta Slim is playing the piano and encourages Sammy to grab his banjo and to start playing. Earlier in the film, we get to hear him sing and play his banjo. We also get to see what it does to the crowd. And in a movie that is so deeply rooted in history, music, culture, and ancestry, it does more than just excite the living. We get to see flashes of how his music brings back the ancestors. We get to see African tribes dancing along and playing their native drums. We also get to see futuristic music being played and people on keyboards. And we get to see a piercing of the veil. To pierce the veil is to open the portal between life and death. And Remick thinks he can use this to his advantage. See, as Sammy is playing and singing, he's not just playing or singing like anybody else. That voice is drawing Remick closer and closer to the juke joint. With a gift like that, Remick figures he can use that to his advantage. All he has to do is make everybody in the juke joint a vampire. And then he'll have his family. He'll have his community. This film was so good. And as for the performances, I kind of touched on this earlier in the review, how Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan just have really great chemistry together, which is really true. And you can just kind of see how they were able to lean on each other. I saw a couple interviews about them, just talking how much they enjoy working with one another, and just being able to bounce ideas off of one another, which is just like a really great pairing. I think Michael B. Jordan does so wonderfully with the mixture of suspense and terror and mystery. And I think also Miles Caton, this is his very first acting role. I thought he did such a great job as Sammy, because he's really just a young man, and he really has no idea that the thing that everyone has called his gift throughout his life ended up, becoming a curse. Or does it? Because then you have to go and see it. But this was such a unique and effective approach to an otherwise horror film. Now, Ryan Coogler has talked in interviews about this, and he's described it as a genre fluid film. So you can kind of tell that obviously vampires are going to be a prominent theme in the film, because when you see the trailer, you kind of know who some of your vampires are anyway. So I hope I didn't spoil it for you if you didn't already know. But the history, he leans so much into that. One of the things that was really important to him was really being as authentic as he possibly could be to the setting itself, and just to his audience. I mean, he really understands. He just understands the drama. He understands tension. He understands intention, because all of the choices that he made cinematically were on purpose. He wanted you to really be on the edge of your seat, which I physically, literally on the edge of my seat when I was watching that movie. It was just a little side note that I thought was kind of interesting. I was sitting there, and I noticed that three of the actors in this movie are also actors in MCU projects. I don't know if that has anything to like do with anything, but the reason I brought it up is because Jack O'Connell, I think if there's a place for him in the MCU, let's do it. Jamie Lawson, Kevin Feige, I need you to see my review and just start cooking something up. Because the casting in Sinners was just so wonderful. Um, just the history of it, the way that music sets such an important pace for the film as well. You get old school country jams on banjos. You also get touches of African tribal music, but you also get Irish music because that's Remix heritage. So I just thought it was really beautifully done. It was really, really nicely woven together. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, go and see it. Um, there are a few things I do want to add with influences like Salem's Lot by Stephen King, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, uh, uh, Devil in a Blue Dress, Interview with the Vampire, From Dusk Till Dawn. You can see all of these inspirations. Oh my God, No Country for Old Men. That's another one that I like. There was a scene in the movie that like just kind of made me think of that. But anyway, the inspirations are also clear, and he's really taken all of them to just create a really beautiful original movie. Because again, this broke a record. Like 96% critic score out of 100% and 98% audience score. So, yeah, I think that's all I have. Get in the comments, like, share, subscribe, all the stuff. I think that's all. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Bye.